All right, and we're live. I'm your host, Neil D'Souza, of podcast Marlon Yee, Magic Monday. And before I bring it in, today is so amazing, and Magic Mondays, the future's looking so bright. I gotta wear shades.
I
Let me
love
bring in my let me bring in my co-host here today, Jason Vaz.
What up? What up?
Yeah, yes, and of course, none other than the man, the myth, Marlon Yee, man.
What's up,
Welcome,
everyone? What's up? What's up? Thanks. Thank you.
Great to have you guys again, and we've got to really welcome everyone. We're glad you guys are with us today. Now, in the news, we got to start off here, and I'm going to throw this right out to you, Jason. In the news, what's going on? But nothing else. But we've been opening up here in Ontario. Lockdown, right? Like I don't know if there's anything else more important. There's lineups everywhere this weekend that I went. Tell me, come on, what do you think about the lockdown opening up?
It's very interesting, guys. I read a very interesting statistic over the weekend, just before the lockdown, that if everyone bought 119 drinks, patio drinks, if they bought that, we would actually make up the lost revenue that we've lost during this lockdown. I have to say, I was on the patio on Saturday, and I did my part.
Wait, how many drinks do we have to buy?
119.
119. Do we need to start a counter here for you? And countdown. The countdown.
The 119 have been purchased. That's what Saturday was for.
Marlon, your thoughts on the on things opening up?
I think it's a good thing. Everywhere was slammed. Every store I drove by had like crazy lineups. I was on the patio yesterday, and some bars are actually opening until 2 a.m. on Sundays to make it back for lost volume. So yeah, wow. The smart ones are, at least. That's what I think, at least. So, and it was packed. It was packed all the way to the end.
Really? And what about social distancing?
Seat at a table of 4, walk in the restaurant with your mask. That's about it. You can't jump around from tables to tables, but that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can go up to 6 if you're all from the same household. So 4 strangers, 6 family of 6. So if you have a family of 7, you got to kick one of your family members out if you want to go to the patio. It is what it is.
So hang on. So if you're going to a patio, you can do it, but you have to have no more than 6 people with you.
Under the same household.
6 if you're from the same household.
If you're not from the same household, you can have up to 4 people.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
I also want to share an interesting stat. This is a Canada-wide stat. It's not exclusive to Ontario, but active cases for COVID-19 are now at 16,957, guys. To make sense of that, that is pretty much what the numbers were like in July. So we're very much ahead of the curve. It looks like we're on the home stretch and opening up. I'm excited. I think we're all excited.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much excitement. I saw a lineup like 4 stores down for people that wanted to go to Winners, and a little shout out to Winners. Feel free to give us a little bit of sponsorship love. But lineups all over the place. So exciting times. Obviously, there's a whole lot of pent up emotion. People have been in their homes, and I think to some degree, people are just looking for that opportunity to be able to get out and even be amongst people again. Is what we're seeing.
People watching. Everyone loves that. People watching, right?
That's great. Okay, well. Speaking of which, let's get into this week. Now we're going to start off with for buyers and sellers with our resident realtor, Jason Vaz.
Yes. Okay. So this weekend for buyers and sellers, as you guys know, stress test came in a couple of weeks ago. Everyone's got to get approved at 3.25. It seems that the market heard it, they saw it, and they didn't care about it because the market is on fire. Couple successes. I had two of my clients that were able to close and firm up on deals this week. If you are shopping and looking for homes, it is extremely difficult to land a deal with the amount of shrewd competition that has been there. So yeah, guys, two great successes. People are succeeding. Crazy market. My best advice to you is that if you can afford to buy, you should buy, because it seems like no matter what they throw at us, it is not bringing the market down whatsoever. So yeah, healthy market. So that's what you got for buyers and sellers.
Oh, awesome! That sounds great. If you're buying in, it sounds great if you're selling. And are we seeing the inventory? Are we seeing more inventory out there right now?
In certain markets, yes. We are
Yeah.
seeing more and more people, especially now with things opening up. People are a little bit more optimistic in regards to hitting the market. That being said, though, the inventory is definitely skewed into the seller's favor.
Yeah.
We're going to need to go a lot more before it goes in the buyer's favor. I don't think we have the time on our calendar to ever hit those numbers, unless like we triple the inventory right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Jason Vaz. All right, we're going to move over to the mortgage minute with Marlon Yee. Marlon, what do you
So
got for us?
yeah, I just want to update everybody on the rates. So as everybody know, like Jason said, the stress test at 5.25. We've gotten some clarity from the lenders and the Bank of Canada where rates are going next year. So most likely, the prime rate is going to go up next year, which means variable is going to go up. But we've also been told that a lot of the banks are forecasting that mortgage fixed rates are also going to go up in the mid threes. So right now, what I'm recommending to anybody that's in a variable mortgage in the last 3-4 years, now may be a good time to break it, even though you have a really super low rate, to hedge your bets for the next 5 years and go into like a fixed mortgage. If you're buying a new place, I think you can still go into variable, but you have to watch the market to see where it's going and lock it in once you see that it starts to trend up next year. So rising rates, I don't know if that's going to cool the market or not. I don't think it will, because we're still stress testing at 5.25. And one thing everyone has to know about the stress test is that it's now going to be an annual thing every December, and it's now going to be set by the government and not the banks. So the good thing is that we have some clarity as to how often they'll review it. But again, the government's in charge, so you know what happens when they intervene in the market, right? So we'll see how it goes.
Well, Marlon, let me just ask you and slow you down for
Sure.
So what you're saying is that it looks like interest rates are going to go up, and so anyone who has a variable needs to lock in.
Yeah, a lot of people from 2-3 years ago have like prime -1, prime -1.2. So, really, really low rate than the fixed. But, if you wait another year, when you renew now, the rates are going to be higher than the fixed mortgages now. So now's a good time to break early. Variables are really cheap to break, 3 months interest, and then you lock into a fixed mortgage for the next 5 years.
Okay, so will someone have to, if someone was to do that, will they have to pay that portion, the 3 months interest, to be able to then lock in?
Yes, if they're breaking the variable mortgage, it's 3 months interest. So what that means, hypothetically, let's say your monthly payment is $2,000. Every payment has two parts. It's principal and interest. Principal was paying off the mortgage. Interest, that's the portion they're going to look at. So let's say it's $1,000. Most variables will probably, a $2,000 payment will probably be around $3,000 to break. So relatively cheap compared to a fixed mortgage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for people that are in fixed mortgages, that are in closed 5-year terms?
Unfortunately, there's not much you can do. If you're with the big five banks, the penalties are very expensive to break. If you're with the monoline lenders, you can probably look and see if it's worth breaking now. But it is what it is. It's fixed, and most times you just gotta wait till the end of the term and play it by then. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you very much, Marlon Yee, man. All right. Okay, great. And now we're gonna do a quick bit on investment clues with your very own Neil D'Souza. So what I want to talk about today, guys, is an investment clue. I get this question about, I'm thinking of investing in real estate. And if you're thinking about investing in general, you have to ask a couple of questions. And the thing that I want to start off with today is, do you understand that there's two types? There's active investing and there's passive investing. And what do I mean by active and passive? Well, for someone who's starting up, a property management company and they're going to manage properties, you're actively doing that work, right? You're going to be going out and you're going to be collecting rents. You're going to be doing that stuff. It's great business, and many of us don't want you to go into that because we like collecting rent checks. But if you're thinking about it, by all means, go ahead and jump into that. But so businesses are going to be active. If you're doing flips, what's a flip? If you're buying a property, fixing it up, and then reselling it, if you're doing that, that's another active investment. And so now what's a passive investment on the other side? Well, passive investing is things like private lending, a private mortgage, where you're taking your money and you're putting it out there and letting it do the work. And you're not actually doing work for that money. If you're putting a passive investment is any time that you're putting your money out there and you're not actually doing the work. And so first investment clue is know whether you're going to be doing an investment actively or whether you want to be doing it passively. Now, of course, most people are going to start with active investments, and then once you've built up enough wealth, then you're going to be moving it over and getting into passive investments. That's Investing Clues for this Monday, June the 14th. All right. Okay. Now we've gotten into all of that. Now we're going to segment into our main topic, which is none other than buying a rental property. Now, as we start that off, I want to bring up an article here, and to get us kicked off, we're talking about a developer that wants to, here you go, plans to buy $1 billion worth of single family houses in Canada for rentals, to create rentals. And as we talk about buying a rental property, we've got to ask the question. I'm going to kick this over to you, Jason, to get us started. Do we even want to still be looking at rental properties with a billionaire coming into this space? Billionaire developer.
I'll say this much. I'm very optimistic about news like this, and I'll tell you why. If this developer's it has committed to investing $1 billion. Now, in Ontario, that's like 1,000 homes. But Canada-wide, that's a lot more. It's like 10,000. Now, what is that going to do? We're already seeing what has fueled our market right now? Low rates, but more importantly, low inventory. If you've got one buyer that is committed to saying, hey, I've got $1 billion cash and I'm going to be buying up everything, you're probably going to be paying some premiums. The reason they'll be paying some premiums is because they want to ensure they hit their goal. Their goal is not to spend $1 billion. The goal is to acquire X amount of homes. Now, that is going to constrain our inventory rich. By true will push up prices. Right? Now, for those of us that have investment properties, we're going to vastly benefit because in his defense, and where he's kind of coming from, it is in his best interest to buy something that already has the ability to be a multifamily home, whether it's got a basement home, whether it's a triplex. Those types of properties are going to be very attractive to somebody like that. So those of us who own them are now going to be able to sell them at a premium. Mm-hmm. Now, the smart investor will turn to somebody like Marlon Yee and say, hey, why don't we pull out some cash? And why don't we join the rings and start buying some more?
Okay, so before we get to Marlon, I know you got lots to share with us, but Jason, tell us a little bit more about this whole aspect of buying a rental property. I know that you even did this not that long ago yourself, and now let me frame it here. Mm-hmm. I want to keep us into no more than 1 to 3 units. We can talk about more than 3 units at another point. We're going to keep our conversation into if you're buying single family homes, if you're buying duplexes, if you're buying a triplex. How does someone start? Where do they start with buying?
So, actually, yes, 100% keep it under 3, because once we go above that, we go to commercial lending, completely different monster. How do we begin this? I've always told people, look for potential, all right? Many buyers in today's market are very scared of renovations. Don't be scared of renovations. As long as you plan it and budget it out correctly, you're fine. So tried and true, I'll talk about what I did. Recently purchased a house that I duplex. I turned into a double unit, um, as before was a single family home. So created a side entrance, created a basement, opened up some windows, made sure I had the right inspections in place so that it could be legalized. A couple of reasons why we did this. All right. Number one, you have a very good pick on your end as a landlord of what kind of tenants you get in there. When you have an illegal unit, you're rolling the dice a little bit. Okay. When you have a legal unit, you kind of only are dealing with the creme de la creme when it comes to tenants coming in, which is a quintessential part of having an investment property. Secondly, when you take this to your lender, so say you buy a house for $500,000, you spend about $100,000 getting into a duplex. When you go to your lender and say, "Hey, I'd like to reevaluate the home and get a new mortgage on there because I just dumped a ton of money into it. I'd like to get it restructured." The lenders are going to, like the appraisers that they hire for to appraise the property are going to appraise it higher now that it's a legal duplex. So in most instances, investors can actually get their capital back shortly after legalizing the property, and that allows them to now use their capital to now invest and buy another property. So
okay, I need to pause you there for a second. Let's go over to Marlon here. Marlon, can you fill us in a little bit on this financing piece that Jason has just opened up for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's called the BRRRR method. You buy the property, add some income to it, add some value, and then you can refinance it. So most lenders will refinance up to 80% of the new value of the property. One thing that Jason kind of triggered in my mind right now actually is there's actually a lender out there for pre-construction condos. Most lenders only, close on a pre-con condo at the price you bought it. There is one lender that is now appraising properties at market value, and you can take up to 80% of the market value, essentially getting back most of your money, and then putting it into something that's separate or in another pre-con again if you want. But,
whoa, hang on. So what are you saying this new lender is doing? And it sounds like a real game changer. They're going to accept what value?
The current market value. It is a B lender, so the rates are higher.
Okay.
But it is out there. If you want to take your money back out, all that you put in, because you get 80% of the market value. I mean, I've seen some condos purchased for like $350. Now they're worth $550. So I mean, you could literally take out 80% of $550, and you would get back all your down payment that you originally put into the project. So I mean, a lot of people don't use it because the rate's a little high, but I think if you have an investor mindset, it's definitely worth looking at that product.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is you're going to be able to, whatever money you put in, you're going to be able to pull that out right away.
Yeah.
And literally not have any money out of pocket, potentially,
yeah,
depending on how you set it up.
Yep. That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Well, we'll come back to you. All right, Jason, tell us a little bit more. Let's tell us a little bit more about that whole buying process. Because, okay, you're a realtor, and most people are not realtors. So how are people even identifying a property to buy, and where's the realtor going to come in on this process?
So it's to answer your question is a two-part question here. There's a right and wrong way of investing in real estate. There's a speculative way. I'm not a fan of it. Some people are. I prefer a cash flow method. Most of my investors that I work with are building their empire. They're not working with millions of dollars. They're average Joe saying, "Hey, you know what? They see the value in having an investment property. They see how real estate prices have skyrocketed over the last few decades, and they say, "Hey, I want a piece of it." But they don't have like $700,000 in liquid assets that they can just like, hey, let's just dump some money into things. So we got to work with what they have. So I've always found a cash flow method is the best method. So when you're approaching an investment property or you're making a decision, it's important to know your numbers ahead of time. One of the things I always tell people is if it doesn't cash flow at 20%, it's probably overvalued. Others may say, hey, but it can potentially grow so much that it's worthwhile running it at a negative cash flow for 2 to 3 years because where you're going to end up is better than where you began. Personally, I disagree. Professionally, I can understand where that method's from, but if I was giving anyone advice, I'd say, hey, look at what you're working with. If you're working with 100K, that means you have a $500,000 purchase. If the property rents out, and when you look at all your expenses, don't just look at your mortgage, by the way, look at your taxes, look at your hydro costs, look at general maintenance. You need to know all of these things. And if you don't know, either consult with your realtor or ask other landlords, like what are kind of some of the expenses. I think the research phase before you execute the purchase is far more important than finding the right place, because if you don't know what you're looking for, the whole needle in a haystack, it's hard enough to find a needle in a haystack. It's even harder when you don't know what a needle is,
And do you as a realtor help your clients with that, Jason? Would a realtor help their clients with identifying that property and being able to get that information?
Well, yes and no. Most agents are there to assist with the transaction. I have a special practice where I work with a lot of investors. So with our services that we provide personally, yes, we do. We connect with people like Marlon Yee, who will run the numbers down to the last dime to show them, hey, does this work? Does this not work? In fact, one of the deals we closed this week, Marlon and myself, had an investor attribute included in it, where a client was purchasing a place. We utilized the basement apartment rent to get them approved for more so that they could win a bidding war, and we were successful in doing so. Marlon knows anytime I send him a deal, there's a lot of numbers involved. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I know I am the reason for Marlon's aspirin subscription, because I definitely feel I have a lot of headaches. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, that's something that we do. Not all realtors. Me personally, yes, I do.
Okay, great. Well, one of the things I'd love to just point out here, when it comes to investing in 1 to 3 units, you're really going to have to understand for people that are looking to buy a rental property, and if you want to do 1 to 3 units, it's a great place to start. It's a great place to start to learn what it's like dealing with a tenant. It's a great place to start to learn financing, because you can afford to do it. In most cases, your income will allow you to be able to get into that side. So from the investing standpoint, there's a lot of different strategies where you can get involved and you can offset when you're talking about 1 to 3 units. Because once you get to larger properties with more units, now you're dealing with multiple tenants, and you've got to be able to know how all of those numbers. It's a lot more important to know the numbers, and once you get into the higher number of units. So from an investing standpoint, great place to start. You can, I think, Jason, this is something that, in you having that property and then having tenants, for someone else that's looking to do that, you have direct management over those people, as opposed to some property that's further off and not knowing what's going on at your property. Now, quickly, Marlon, I want to just ask you, are there any things that we really need to be concerned in people that want to get into an investment property? What do they need to be concerned about from a financing standpoint?
Well, the main thing with an investment property is that you do need a 20% down payment. You cannot buy an investment property with less than 20%, only if it's owner occupied. I think the other thing that people have to understand too is, like you said, you need to speak to a professional. Most lenders will only take about 50% of the rent. There's some lenders that will take 80, but different lenders take different amounts. But you have to realize that they're not going to calculate the full amount of the rent when you're buying, and that's why it's important to run the numbers. It may cash flow for you, but for the lender, they look at it differently.
And are there any major pitfalls when it comes to the financing side? I want to give people a little bit of the pitfalls of doing this, because everyone tells us about all the great stuff when it comes to buying an investment property. But what are some of the pitfalls that you see people run into, Marlon?
Well, I don't really see many pitfalls on the investment side, to be honest. As long as you have 20%, you've done your due diligence. Not all the time we can find properties that cash flow, like Jason says. So sometimes I have to tell a client, you have to look at it like a little piggy bank. You're still putting money in, it's going to grow. From the non-mortgage side, what I've seen for pitfalls, and maybe Jason can verify this, there are some tenant issues right now with COVID and all that stuff. There's some tenants who aren't paying. But you want to it's hard being a landlord. That's what I can say, right? At this time, at least. And so Jason has it good because his tenant's in his basement. But when you have someone downtown in your condo and they're not paying the bill and not answering your phone, it can be difficult. So you should have an emergency fund ready just in case, someone doesn't want to pay the bill.
Oh, emergency fund. Great advice. Great advice. Okay. Well, come on, Jason, you got to give us some of the pitfalls, because I know that one of the things that you did, and you got to share with us, you built a space into the area that you were going to be living in for a wine rack. and then yeah, but come on, tell us some of the pitfalls.
Okay. I'll explain the wine thing. When you're sometimes when you're doing okay, when you're building an investment property and it's strictly an investment property, you're very close to the numbers. You're very close, and you won't overinvest. Where one of the pitfalls I ran into is I was living in the home, so I added a lot of things to it because it was my home and I wanted to look nice. One of the things of what Neil is talking about is I was designing my kitchen, and I said I'm there with my designer. I'm there with my general contractor, and I said, I need a wine fridge. I need you to build this kitchen so that I can have a built-in wine fridge. There are no ifs, ands, buts about it. I've been living it now, lockdown hit, so I have the space for it. 7 months later, I still have no wine fridge. I have a space for it. And here's the crazy thing. I don't drink white wine. Like, I don't need this. So that's what Neil's talking about. But to address the main issue of what are some of the pitfalls, the biggest one by far is having a tenant that's not paying you. And this is very common. And this is where, in us in the industry, we call them professional tenants. In Ontario, the rules are very much skewed in the tenant's favor. So no matter what you do, if a tenant stops paying you, you're in some trouble because they could do so for 9 months. This was before COVID. Now the trick is, how do you? This is something you can prevent from happening, but once it's happened, you're SOL. So I've been fortunate. I've helped a lot of clients landlords get tenants. I manage my own tenants, and I've never run into any issues. And the reason I've never run into issues is that I set up a criteria. I almost set up think about it like a Facebook profile, all right? Where there's no picture, there's no name, but everything else I fill in. What do I want my tenant to look like for this particular property? So I look at income, I look at social status, I look at a lot of things, okay? And I build this criteria, and then what I do is I create a system where I reverse engineer it, saying, how do I attract that kind of person? Because let's face it, people aren't out there to screw you over. They're not here to say, hey, I want to take advantage of this landlord. In most cases, if somebody is employed in gainful employment, they're going to pay you, and you're not going to have any issues with them. Usually something happens, whether they could be getting divorced, they could have lost their job, they could have been reduced hours. Well, from my perspective, I said, okay, well, if I can avoid those three things, I'm most likely going to get a tenant that is most likely going to pay me on time. And that's where checking credit comes in. That's when checking their references, and not the personal ones. When they give you an employment letter, make sure the number is correct. Make sure the person you're speaking to is the person that's employing them. A lot of you landlords out there are lazy, and you're trying to cut corners. I'm in a bunch of landlord groups, and they're all trying to figure out, how do I do this without paying someone to do it? And I'm like, no, like when I need a credit check, I pay for it. I cough up like $20 with Equifax, pull the credit, and I go through with a fine-tooth comb. And I connect with my contacts at the bank to say, hey, what does this mean if I don't know? And I offer them compensation.
Jason, I love what you're saying, because when I bought my first rental property, a number of these mistakes that you're talking about, I did. And I can tell you one of the major pitfalls is not having an emergency fund like Marlon was talking about, because I can tell you for a fact that I was luckily, that was some really good advice, and I had that set aside because I had 6 months set aside of payments, so that, and what happened, the tenant stopped paying and they didn't want to pay. You couldn't get them to pay, and it took me time to get them out. And so just having that money aside was amazing. Now, the other pitfall that you just identified was I rushed in and put someone in there that I wasn't 100% on because I wanted the money coming in rather than worrying about them. The tenants I had before, I had had them for many years. They were great tenants. I had vetted them really well, but then it was a bad timing for me, and I let someone come in, and sure enough, every time I've not done the due diligence, it's been a bad story. And so those were learning lessons for me. So wow, so that's a whole bunch of great stuff about buying rental properties, and there's so much more I know that each of you guys could cover and help us out with. We've come to the end of our time. Last little bit. Anything else you want to say there, Jason?
All in all, guys, don't be afraid to spend a little bit of cash to get the right tenant. That is a very you're spending $1 to save $100. That's the way I look at it. So. That's my best piece of advice for any of you guys looking to be landlords. Vet your tenants or pay someone to vet your tenants.
And Marlon?
I would say, the main issue for most people is coming up with the 20%. So we have what we call pre-construction condos. I always think that's a great buy. It gives you like a stage down payment. So it helps you get in there. And, buy real estate. It's a great long-term wealth generator. And I don't think you can lose in real estate in the long-term run. So.
Well, I'll end us off with the future's so bright. If you're getting into rental properties, that you got to be wearing shades. Absolutely. Definitely a topic we're going to talk more about, near and dear to my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. That's another episode of Magic Mondays. That's a wrap.
Take care, guys.
Take care.